When you think of maritime disasters, what incident comes to mind? For most people, it would probably be the sinking of the Titanic, which took 1,514 lives in 1912. A lesser-known case is a ship that sank 40 years after the Titanic, when a storm hit Japan. 1,155 people would lose their lives on this ship, making it the worst maritime disaster in Japan outside of war. This is the story of the Touya-Maru Incident. Hokkaido is the northernmost of the 4 main islands of Japan. It makes use of its vast expanses of sparsely populated land for agriculture, and has a strong fishing industry supported by rich coastal resources. On top of this, it also produces coal and natural gas, both of which are extremely valuable to the nation of Japan, which has little in terms of natural resources. During the Second World War, most of the ships which were used to transport resources from Hokkaido were destroyed. After the war ended, it was crucial for Japan to build ships to reconnect Hokkaido to the other islands of Japan. The first of such ships was the Tōya-Maru, which was capable of transporting over 1,000 people, large amounts of cargo, and even cars. The Tōya-Maru was completed in 1946 and was operated by the Japan National Railway Company. She was capable of traveling between Hokkaido and Honshu, the main island of Japan, in 4.5 hours, and would make regular trips almost daily between the two islands. On September 26, 1954, the Tōya-Maru arrives at Hakodate port in Hokkaido at 11:05 a.m. She was scheduled to load new cargo and head back to Honshu at 2:30 p.m., but news comes in of a typhoon rapidly approaching the area. At 12:40 p.m., winds of up to 25 meters per second are observed, and many vessels decide to call off their operations for the day. But the Tōya-Maru was a relatively new, large ship, capable of enduring conditions smaller ships could not. It was not uncommon for her to set sail when other ships would decide not to. Therefore, the captain decides to proceed as scheduled, but requests come in for the Tōya-Maru to take on additional cargo from ships that would be cancelling their trips. It took time to load this additional cargo, and when the clock hits 3 p.m., almost half an hour after the scheduled departure time, the captain orders any cargo not on the ship at that moment to be left behind and to set sail at once, fearing that they may be caught in the worst of the storm if they delayed any further. But as they were lifting the ramp attaching the ship to the harbor, the power goes out. The storm had damaged the electrical grid, causing a blackout across the city. With no idea of how long it would take for the power to be restored, the captain calls off the scheduled trip back to Honshu. Ultimately, the power would come back in just 2 minutes, but the captain did not withdraw his decision to stay in port. Later investigations would indicate that if the Tōya-Maru had departed at this time, they would probably have beaten the storm and made it safely to Honshu. The fact that the power outage caused a delay of 2 minutes and influenced the captain's decisions would change the fate of the crew and over 1,000 passengers for the worse. Initial reports estimated that the typhoon would pass by at around 5 p.m., and indeed the wind speeds in the area would begin to slow down, and the weather would begin to recover late in the afternoon. The captain, assuming the worst of the storm had passed, overturned his decision to cancel the voyage, and instead decides to leave port at around 6:30 p.m. However, in reality this was only a temporary break in the storm, and to make matters worse, the typhoon had decelerated significantly, meaning it would stay in the area around the port for longer than expected. Unfortunately, weather forecasting technology at the time could not grasp this situation, so the Tōya-Maru departed believing that the typhoon had passed. They would realize their understanding of the situation was incorrect almost immediately after leaving port. Wind speeds picked up, reaching 40 meters per second. To give you some perspective, wind speeds of 40 meters per second is strong enough to blow people off their feet and uproot trees. Under these conditions, the Tōya-Maru did not have the option of turning around and returning to port. Their best option was to lower the anchor and try their best to weather the storm. However, the storm would actually grow stronger in the following hours, reaching speeds of close to 60 meters per second, which is strong enough to destroy wooden houses and throw large cars around. These strong winds were accompanied by high waves, and the Tōya-Maru would begin to take on large amounts of water. At around 8:30 p.m., water reaches the engine room and the boilers, cutting off the ship's power supply. The captain decides to make the ship intentionally beach itself on a nearby reef, rather than have the ship sink in the open sea. At 10 p.m., the captain informs the passengers that the ship will be intentionally run aground, and for everyone to put on their life vests. At 10:30 p.m., the Tōya-Maru runs itself onto the reef and anchors itself there, allowing the captain and crew to breathe a sigh of relief. This moment of peace would be short-lived, as within minutes the chain connecting the ship's anchor snaps, and the Tōya-Maru begins rapidly listing to the starboard side while taking on large amounts of water. Within just 15 minutes, the ship is flipped almost upside down, with the chimneys being stuck in the ocean floor. The captain calls for rescue, but because it was during an extreme storm, by the time help arrived, it was too little, too late. Out of the 1,314 souls aboard, 1,155 would perish, with only 159 being rescued. Many of the deceased were found in their rooms within the Tōya-Maru. It is assumed that because the ship had flipped upside down within such a short amount of time, the passengers simply did not have time to make it out. Several other ships in the area suffered similar fates, with 4 ships sinking, leading to another 275 deaths. On top of that, another 300 or so maritime casualties occurred across Japan due to this typhoon, which would eventually be known as the Touya-Maru typhoon, and be remembered as the worst maritime disaster outside of war in Japanese history. In the aftermath, the finger would initially be pointed at the captain of the Tōya-Maru, who had gone down with his ship. However, consideration would be given to the fact that the Tōya-Maru was a critical component of logistics connecting Hokkaido to the main island of Japan, and the captain had significant pressure to deliver his cargo on time. Also, it was reasonable for the captain to assume the Tōya-Maru could make the voyage safely with the information he had at the time, with weather reports estimating the storm would pass by in the afternoon, combined with the fact that the Tōya-Maru had a proven track record of sailing through storms. Ultimately, the captain would not be held responsible, especially considering he had gone down with the ship, and had no opportunity to defend his decisions and actions. Lessons from this incident would be applied to future shipbuilding, with designs being modified to take on less water, and have the ability to efficiently dump any water that gets on the ship. Protocol regarding the decision to set sail would also be altered. Up until this incident, the captain of the ship would have absolute authority, but this would be changed to require a consensus from both the captain and port authorities. The Tōya-Maru disaster would also fuel a mega-project to build a tunnel between Hokkaido and Honshu. This tunnel was completed in 1988, significantly improving connectivity between the two islands. This tunnel, called the Seikan Tunnel, is 54 kilometers or 33 miles long, and 240 meters or almost 800 feet deep, making it the longest undersea tunnel in the world to this day. What do you think of the case? Is the captain to blame, or was he a victim of circumstance who tried to make the best of the situation with the information available to him? Let me know in the comments below. A big thank you to Korbachu and my other Patreons for supporting this channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you for watching until the end. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. I'll see you next time.